tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So this heart quality of loving kindness, mettā, friendliness. In the traditional understanding, in the early Buddhist understanding, mettā is a kind of protection spell. The origin story for the practice of mettā, one of the origin stories has a bunch of monks going off to meditate in a rather frightening forest, a forest where there are nature spirits who were not immediately trusting of the humans coming there. And so the monks go to meditate. They set themselves up, in this grove of trees, and they begin to meditate. And they get scared. The nature spirits are swirling around them. There's ghosts. There's natural forces. Maybe there's just ordinary animal forces, as you might find in the forests of the time. There's elephants. There's tigers. There's other kinds of. There's snakes. There's all sorts of creatures, and there's ghosts. And so the monks go back to the Buddha and they say, Blessed One, it's hard to meditate in this place. Our minds aren't settling. What should we do? And the Buddha gives them this practice of centering the mind not on the body or the breath or another of the abstract qualities, but on the feeling of friendliness. So this is particularly a feeling of impersonal, kind of universal friendliness. And so it's a concentration object. You connect with the quality of friendliness, direct it toward all beings without exception, and it becomes a stable resting place for the mind, for the attention, in the heart space. And so it's actually one of the easiest pathways toward, for some people, toward meditative absorption or jhana. Entering jhana on loving kindness or any of the brahmavihāras is sometimes easier than a less emotional quality for many of us, like the breath, or a more abstract quality, like the color fields called kasina, that are, other objects for meditation, or the elements, things like that. So the monks go back to the grove and they begin to suffuse the space with loving kindness. And the spirits there, they love this. And they're like, oh, these people are friendly. We like this. This feels really good. We'll take care of them. And so then they become protectors. And so loving kindness becomes a kind of protection. And in that sense, we might feel how friendliness is a certain kind of magic in the world. It's magic rather than just a meditation because it's relational, right? If magic is what we call practices that don't just change our own awareness, but actually affect the physical and relational space around us, loving kindness is relational, right? It extends out from the body. And we did in the meditation, we did this visualization of imagining ourselves in, a neighborhood we really love, that's easy to be in, that feels safe, that's comfortable, and that has other beings in it, like other people walking on the street or being in a cafe. And you imagine yourself being in this place. And some people there are happy, some people there are unhappy, some people there are neutral to you. But you feel good in yourself, and you can first rest in this foundational quality of loving kindness, just being at ease. The way that It's easy to be friendly with others when you feel at ease in yourself. So starting with being at ease in ourself. And then opening the inner gaze, or opening the gaze in this space to other beings. And that when loving kindness or metta encounters folks suffering, here's some people who are not at ease, they're suffering through, in whatever way, heartbreak, physical pain, poverty, oppression, they're not at ease, trauma, distress of various kinds. The response from the seat of friendliness is compassion. The Pali word is karuna. And the way that loving kindness encounters suffering, when the loving kindness is a kind of protection spell, is that there's the witnessing and the tenderness that arises in the presence of suffering, but there's a kind of psychic boundary. There's not a taking on of that suffering. I'm not obligated to relieve their suffering. I'm not enrolled in the story of their suffering. I don't even have to take on the pain, in a way, of the suffering. Compassion is not the same as empathy, a kind of feeling that pain as if it is my own pain. I'm not trying to do that, actually. What I want to do is I want to be clear of mind and heart in the presence of the world as it is. So the Buddha doesn't feel sad when he encounters people that are suffering. He doesn't feel sad when he encounters sad people. In the same way that he doesn't feel angry when he encounters angry people. I don't want to feel anger when I see someone who's angry. What I want to feel is understanding and sympathy and kindness, a kind of generosity of heart. That I could understand, I could understand why you're angry, right? If I hear your story and I'm, and my heart is not closed to the forces acting upon you, I could totally understand why you're angry in this moment, or afraid, or grieving, or, whatever form of suffering is happening. Compassion is kind without caretaking. It has a kind of boundary to it, but it, in a kind of middle way, it also doesn't hold itself so distant that the compassion doesn't have any heart energy to it, right? It's not like reading the news of someone's misfortune far away, and it doesn't really touch me. I'm like, oh yeah, another tragedy far away. On those days when my heart is numb, that's not really compassion, and so compassion and sympathetic joy, both, they have this quality of being close but not embedded, boundaried but not distant. So from the seat of loving kindness, I'm resting. In my visualization, I'm at a cafe that I like in a nice neighborhood. If you must know, and it reveals me as being of a certain social class and locality, but those of you who are local to the Bay Area might recognize that I was sitting at a little table on the sidewalk outside of the Cheese Board, which is a lovely cafe in North Berkeley. And all the people are around, and there's definitely suffering in that neighborhood, and there's definitely well-being in that neighborhood. And I'm probably having a very nice coffee and a very nice pastry, or a piece of, sourdough pizza or something from the Cheese Board. And I'm hanging out. I've hung out in that neighborhood many times, having a nice coffee. And there's the people who are having a delightful day in this delightful neighborhood, and there's the people that are having a very difficult day in this neighborhood. And it's like that. Like any place. So in my visualization, feeling at ease, that's where I happened to be at ease in this meditation today. And so why is metta not just an emotional discipline, but both but a kind of protection spell. Not just an emotional discipline, which it is, cultivating the quality of love and friendliness. It's also not just a meditation where it's a pathway toward the immersed stability of jhana, right, of the really stabilized awareness, but that it is traditionally a protection spell. Why is this? And you might feel into the feeling implication of the meditation. Here I am, I'm in this nice neighborhood, people are all around, and one of the ways that it's possible, one of the reasons that it's possible for me to radiate loving kindness in this way is that I feel safe myself, but it kind of goes both ways. It's not just that, like, yes, I'm safe, I'm in this comfortable neighborhood, I feel at ease here in my particular positionality, it's not just that I feel safe, therefore I can send metta, but it also works the other way around. That when I can contact this feeling of friendliness, it has an extraordinary alchemy in my own heart that it makes everybody not an enemy. Right? The people who are suffering, I'm more able to be not afraid of them and their states when I'm resting in loving kindness and compassion. When I'm not resting in loving kindness, when I'm in my own anxiety, my own fear, my own less coherence of heart, I'm more likely to be afraid of someone who looks angry or themselves distressed or disorganized. I'm more likely to be jealous of the folks who look like they're having a great day. I'm more likely to be in a contracted state of heart and therefore not feel safe. So it works both ways. It's important to construct physical and relational environments for us where we can feel as safe as possible. That is important, right? It's also important wherever we are to connect with as much safety as we can, and then cultivate these states of heart and mind that are generous of heart. And that generosity of heart then kind of doubles back or echoes back on the feeling of safety and increases that feeling of safety. So that it goes both ways and it amplifies. And then, maybe in a more animist way, we can also understand that there are animate forces all around us, that nature is alive, and that therefore everything is alive, right? Even the stones hum with a kind of intelligence. It's not for nothing that, it's worth remembering that our extraordinary modern technology that is really at its heart contains the power of sending information over long distances through wires and through glass and through silicon, that these are all earthen substances that transmit exactly the light and sound that's flowing from my eyes and ears to yours right now. This is transmitted by rock and metal, largely, and light. Right? These are things that we don't automatically think of as being alive, but look how much aliveness is flowing through them. Right? So many of the animist cultures, think of the rock people as some of the most ancient elders. They move so slowly and change so slowly that we don't think of them as being awake or alive. But you can shift your perception to understand, and ancient cultures everywhere understand, great rocks and mountains as having a certain, cognizant presence to them. Mountain spirits. So the world all around us is alive. And being alive, it's relational, it's responsive. And so what does it respond to? You know, it responds to what we bring to it. And if you know, anything about natural environments and ecosystems, you know that there are ways that humans can be in ecosystems in a way that's friendly, and humans can be in ecosystems in a way that's unfriendly, right? That's grasping, that's cruel, that's violent, that's greedy. The ecosystem knows what you're doing, right? The forest knows when you're in it with a chainsaw, harvesting, and when you're in it, tending. You can tend with a chainsaw and you can harm with a chainsaw. And I think the forest knows which one you're doing, when you're in it. I'm not sure how I know that. It feels like that. But this is an ancient understanding, actually, that the earth around us is sensitive to what we do, how we move through it, the energy that we bring. And of course, the people around are, right? You know what it's like to be in a cafe where there are people that are at ease in themselves, kind of radiating themselves, being themselves, having a good day. You know what that's like. You've been in those cafes. And you know what it's like to be in a space where people are not radiating ease, where people are not at ease in themselves. And you don't have to have a conversation to know that, with them to know that. You can know from across the room whether someone is at ease or not. And so Mettā, the brahmaviharas generally, they're actually quite palpable. I think they are really some of the main information that we get from people non-verbally. Right? When you're near someone and you can tell from how they are, from their energy, what they're radiating. And so I think this is part of why Mettā is a protection spell. Right? It's a spell because it's magic, it's relational, it's material, it shines out from you into the world around you. So here you are in a public space, wherever you are, and you're at ease. The quality of Mettā is present. There's a kind of friendliness in you, right? And you establish that field around you. And then, it doesn't mean that you're like categorically safe, right? There are beings, people and otherwise, who are not sensitive to friendliness and who might attempt to cross your boundary, right? So you're not a fool. You're not just acting or being in a place that's inappropriate for you to be, or in a way that's inappropriate for you to be. But there's a quality that you create by being clear in a space, and this is perceived. If someone came into that space with ill intent, perhaps it's more likely that someone would come to your aid. If you were shining the quality of goodness, these qualities of goodness, Maybe it would be easier for you to be mobilized, to leave or to change or to act or to fight back, if something really terrible was happening, to engage. One of the things about loving kindness is that it's not shut down. It's not freeze. It's not collapse, right? And so there's a kind of vibrancy. There's a kind of mobility in it. You have your agency when you're well in this way, when you feel well and at ease. So loving kindness then is foundational heart quality. It's all of these things. It is a cultivation of this nourished, beautiful quality of heart. It is a meditative anchor and a space that the attention can rest in a stabilized way. And it is a relational gesture or an energy that radiates out from the body. And it affects the space around us, the people around us, the beings around us. We often practice loving kindness with, in the insight meditation tradition, we practice it in a form that is descended from the great commentary to the Pali Canon called the Visuddhimagga, written in the 5th century by Acharya Buddhaghosa. And in that style of practice, as it has kind of been translated into the modern era, there's a style of imagining different categories of beings and sending to them a set of phrases, right? A standard set of phrases sends the wish for safety, happiness or ease, strength, and well-being. And so the phrases I say, and everyone says somewhat different variations of these, they're all translations of the 5th century text. And then you can make up your own that go further away from the text, which is fine. The ones I use are, you could start with, you say may you, or may I, or may we, or may all beings. Any variation of those, depending on the category you're pointing it toward. You could say may you, if you're addressing it toward a person or being. May you be safe. And sometimes I'll say, may you be safe from harm of all kinds, inner and outer. May you be happy, or may you be happy and peaceful. I kind of have a short version and a long version, depending on my mood, which one I do. For the third phrase, I'll say, may you be strong in body and mind. It's a very traditional one. And for the last one, a little more poetic, may you live with the ease of well-being. And that one I got directly from Sylvia Boorstein, who I love so much. May you live with the ease of well-being, or simply, may you be at ease. And so there's lots of variations of these, but the core practice is to bring to mind a person, a being, usually starting with people, to invoke the feeling of friendliness, of care for their well-being, and then to say the phrases in your mind directed at this person. And there's a traditional sequence. The simple sequence is a sequence of people that starts with yourself. And it does traditionally start with yourself. In modern insight meditation, we often start with a benefactor and then go to ourself, because so many people have a hard time starting with themselves. It's not easy to send love to ourselves. But traditionally, and maybe this is a commentary on our modern condition, but traditionally, the category of yourself was thought of as being the easiest, because who wouldn't love themselves, in a kind of obvious way. We've gotten both much more psychological and psychodynamically complex and self-hating in the modern period. So a lot of folks have a hard time with this one. But it was traditionally thought of as being fairly obvious. I think not because everyone was like radiantly self-loving and self-compassionate and all those things back in the day, and maybe they were more so than many of us are, but also because the sense of the inner landscape that we get in the early Buddhist texts, it's just, to be honest, not as complex as we find in many modern practitioners. So you don't find people like wallowing in complex stories of abandonment and angst and family trauma and attachment styles and, self-doubt and criticism. Like, that stuff exists, but it's not like the heart of people's process as described in the early texts. You never wallow. No, totally. But some people might, and so just take it with a grain of salt. but understand that the conditions of our contemporary kind of psychological understanding, they really affect how we practice. One thing we might say is we've learned to hate ourselves. It doesn't come naturally. Most animals don't. Even highly traumatized animals, as far as we can tell, don't seem to turn their nervous system process the fear and anger that is natural when in the presence of danger, don't seem to turn it upon themselves in a kind of self-directed narrative, hatred or fear or criticism kind of way. So this is a specialty of ours as contemporary humans. And so be compassionate with that, and know that it's not your fault necessarily. Like you grew up in a culture that taught you that. If you suffer from that kind of self-hatred, self-criticism, it was learned. It was learned the same way that all of the great oppressions were learned, right? No infant comes out racist. It has to be taught. No infant comes out sexist or misogynist. It has to be taught. And I actually think that hatred in general is always taught. It's a cultural quality. The self-protective quality of fighting back is biological. That will happen whether it's taught or not. But for that to metastasize into hatred of another, that's learned. That's learned through trauma, So we have this core quality of mettā, and our practice then, we try to begin with ourselves, but begin somewhere where you can feel the feeling. After the self, the traditional sequence goes to initially a benefactor. This is thought of as someone who's very supportive to you. It can be a teacher or a mentor of some kind, but it's someone who it's easy to love, not someone complex in your relational field. Someone who it's easy to love and to wish well for, you feel grateful for. Gratitude is a core quality in the benefactor relationship. And I think this is important, right? That interwoven with mettā right at the beginning of the sequence is gratitude. How are you grateful to those people around you who have been so helpful? In our contemporary practice, it's encouraged not to use folks like your parents in the benefactor category, because many of us have much more complex and sometimes traumatic relationships with our parents. But again, traditionally, this would be a place to practice a kind of easy gratitude, right? Just to love and respect and be grateful to your parents for all of the hard work they did at raising you. And so that's a quality that is helpful to find, and can be difficult to find. And I will be the first to say that it has not been easy for me to find, gratitude and warmth toward my parents. Things were difficult. But the encouragement, in a certain way, similar to the kind of boundary that we cultivate when we can feel compassion without falling into the story of someone else's suffering, I could feel, I've practiced seeing if I can feel gratitude for what my parents did for me without overcoupling it, without having it be bound up with the mistakes they made and the way that I felt hurt or harmed. And that's not going to be the right practice for everyone, right? The right practice for some folks is to have a strong firewall, and that's, more protective. For others, the practice is to really dive into the feeling and try to process it and come out the other side, the relationship with the parents. So you find what is going to be most healthy for you. But the encouragement is to find that gratitude somehow, and to be able to hold these people that did so much for you with a kind of compassion and warmth of heart and appreciation. So the sequence goes self, benefactor, good friend. And so here you would bring in just someone you just really love, a good friend. Again, if your romantic partner, present or past or imagined, is more complicated, then don't use them here. But use someone who it's easy to love. You can just be like, oh, this person has really been there for me, this good friend, this spiritual friend, and you wish them well, From there, the sequence goes, now it begins to broaden, right? You start with the people that are intimate because you're really trying to generate a feeling with metta. You want to actually feel the friendliness, not just imagine it. So you try to feel it. What's it like to be with these people? Or to be in the cafe on this beautiful day and just, oh, I feel good. These people are good. But then you broaden it beyond the personal, because metta is really not romantic love, and it's not familial love, and it's not friendship love. It's more like the quality that infuses all of those, but that is not specific to them. It's the underlying love that could be directed to anything. And so then from self and benefactor and the good friend, all of which are personal kinds of love, then you broaden and you go to the category of the neutral person. The neutral person, now this is where the visualization of the cafe or the street really shines, because most of these people, you don't know them. And so first you could look at the person, they're over there, they're ordering their donut. You don't know them, you're not attracted to them, you're not repulsed by them, you have no business with them. They're just another person, in the neighborhood, a person that you meet as you're walking down the street, a person that you see each day, and you say, oh, may they be well. I don't know anything about their story. May they be well. That's the neutral person. And you see if you could just feel that. And it's such a lovely quality. And you might, especially if you've skimmed over it in practice, you might, it can be really juicy to take on neutral person practice as a whole sort of practice unto itself. Like just anytime you're out and about in town, enter neutral person practice. Like bring up this kind of friendliness and then just radiate it to all the random people, and it can be super nice, right? You're just like, yeah, you too, buddy. You too, person with the bumper sticker promoting the politician I disagree with, you too. We'll get to them, but everybody. Because then what happens after the neutral person, part of what the neutral person practice teaches you is that you don't like everybody the same way. That's true. And so then from the neutral person, you go further and you include the difficult person. So out in the world, it's easy to love people who are kind of like you. That's the sort of there's that gray area between the good friend and the neutral person. In that gray area is like people that are easy to like, the people that seem like they're in your community, they're kind of your positionality, or they're the people that you appreciate. You're like, oh yeah, I like you, you're my tribe. So that's easy. But then there's really the neutral people. And then going further, there's the difficult people. And those are the folks who, they're hard to scoop into the circle of concern, the circle of care. There's kind of two kinds of difficult people, right? One kind of difficult person is the neutral difficult person, right? The person, the person with the political placard of the opposing team, or, the person, you're a Cal person and they're from Stanford. They're the enemy traditionally, whether a major enemy or similar, they're the person that you kind of generically don't like, right? So that's one kind of neutral person. There's one kind of difficult person, difficult, closer to neutral. send some love to them. And then there's the super difficult people, which are the ones that are more like the mirror of the good friend and the benefactor. They're the personal enemy. They're your really difficult family member, right? Or the person that you know personally that you've had a really hard time with, right? So in a certain way, right, you go from like the people you personally love out toward a broader and broader circle of the neutral. And then once you kind of get good at holding that bigger circle, then you kind of scoop it in. You're like, yeah, and the difficult people, even the ones that are really difficult, you know, you too, buddy, you too, person, you too, my, you know, challenging person. And this is really this practice of like building the circle. You build the circle. Often from here on retreat or in the sequence of practice, we go right from there to all beings, where you've practiced including the loved, the neutral, and the unloved, and then you go just to all beings. In the old commentarial tradition, there's actually a whole sequence here that you can flesh out that includes different categories of non-human beings, beings that fly, beings that swim, beings that crawl, things like that. You can include classes of beings. You can work with sending, to like rich people, poor people, people of different races, people of different, genders and categories of various kinds. You can improvise this because the point, in a way, is to scoop in everybody. And part of what this practice can reveal to you is that you might have some little dark, unlit areas in your psyche where you're like, yeah, everybody except those people, right? You want to find the people that your heart wants to exclude. If you're really going for all beings, because it can be a little bit bypassy to jump to all beings right away. To jump right from, yeah, everybody in the cheese board who mostly agree with my politics, like, I love you all, you're my people, whatever. And then to just be like, yeah, and may all beings everywhere be at peace. And just kind of skip over the like, yeah, may everyone who wrote Project 2025, or may everyone invading their, neighbor's country in a way that I disagree with, may like all the difficult people, whatever your particular thing is. May the pine beetles destroying the pine forest. Oh, you guys, you're going too far. Yeah, may you be safe and well. Like, it's really difficult, actually, to wish well to all beings in a way that's not deluded or checked out. And so part of what I love about including all of the brahmaviharas in metta practice is that it gives us a chance to widen the circle in a way that we can really feel present with, not just in a fuzzy way, but we're really like, no, I'm really trying to include everybody. Okay, it's 3 minutes till the hour, and I've been watching the clock, but I was hooked into the timing of last night's talk at Spirit Rock, which ends at 9:15. So I was all like, oh, we have lots of time. I was just on a different clock because the talk last night was longer. But I wanted to make space for talking, and so then I've defeated my own intention to end on time by forgetting what time the end was at. So sorry about that. But I want to. I'll wrap this up, and then I'll do the thing that we used to do, where I'm going to do a formal close at 9, and then I will stick around for a couple minutes if there's any questions. But just to wrap this up a little bit. The brahmaviharas as a set accomplish this building of the circle and the cultivating of healthy boundaries in this beautiful way. So to go over the set one last time as a review, it starts with metta, loving-kindness, friendliness. That's the home base. It both depends on safety and well-being, and it radiates safety and well-being, and it creates safety and well-being. When metta encounters suffering, encounters beings who are distressed, the natural response, it's not really a different quality of heart. Compassion isn't different from loving-kindness, but it's a kind of responsive loving-kindness, and the tone shifts toward compassion, karuna. Likewise, when loving-kindness encounters joy or well-being, the tone shifts toward appreciation, celebration. In both of those cases, there's just the right amount of distance. I'm not falling into the suffering, I'm not grasping at the joy, but I'm also not so removed that I can't feel it. I'm with the people. I'm in the cafe. We're together. And then, or we're all on the planet together, feeling each other. And the implication of this balanced practice, turning toward suffering, turning toward joy, not lost in either, is equanimity. This quality of the heart that in a certain way knows where it is in relation to both suffering and joy. Again, not too close, not too far away. It's a very middle way kind of wisdom. And the core wisdom of equanimity is that everyone is playing out their own story. Everyone's playing out their own story. Their story is not yours, it's theirs. We're not separate, but we're also not merged. That's like appropriate distance. The heart of metta practice for all of the qualities is a kind of appropriate distance. Not collapsed, not disconnected. And so as we find that appropriate place together, the heart is able to rest in its friendliness and to radiate that friendliness in all directions. And so as we practice, we stitch together a circle of care, bring this quality into everything we do. And I encourage you to notice it as you're out in the world and do the neutral person practice. Shine the light of your heart all around you and just feel how it changes. Like it changes the temperature in the room, actually. And you do that kind of magic. And so we'll pause there for now. So we're right on the hour. Thank you for being here. Blessings in everything that you do and everywhere you go and all the people that you shine toward and around.